Very warm welcome, everyone, to another amazing webinar by the APA. And today we are so excited to have Annie again with us. And I hope, Annie, you don't mind me saying this. I would like to refer to Annie as the queen of the flowers and the queen of the herbs. So we are very much looking forward to this webinar today. It's all going to be about herbs that enhance, support meditation. Before we go there, first of all, I guess most of you will know or will have heard about Annie in the past. If not, her amazing bio and all the credentials is in the chat box. And before I forget, please don't miss out on the publication of Annie's new book, which is going to come out in December. Sue is holding a copy of the previous version of the book in her hands, but Annie has just shared with us before everybody came on that it's going to be a complete revamp of her previous book, which I forgot already the title. What was the name of the book, Annie?
Well, it was called The Complete Floral Healer, and now it's called something like the Healing Power of Flowers.
Okay.
And it's coming out in December.
Great. And again, just please, could we kindly ask everybody to remain muted? And if you have any questions, feel free to put the questions in the chat box. And we either are going to try to look at some of the questions that are relevant to Annie's presentation during the presentation, or we will try to do as whatever we can possible to answer your questions towards the end of the webinar tonight. So this is enough of me for now. I would like to hand over to Annie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Good evening, everybody. How nice to see so many people, people that I know. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Jill. Lots of people I know, and quite a few people that I don't. And I was saying earlier that, as usual, I've prepared far too much stuff, but it's a subject that's very dear to my heart, the combination of meditation and herbs. And I think that herbs have definitely got their part to play to enhance the practice of meditation. And since meditation is not an easy thing, I personally feel that we need all the help that we can get. I don't want it to be a necessarily, as Thomas said, you can ask questions, because I don't particularly want it to be a sort of a formal, just a webinar. We can be interrupted and just discuss things. However, I have got quite a lot of material to get through. So just to say what I'm planning to do, first of all, I wanted to look at why do we need to meditate? Secondly, what can meditation do for us? And we're going to look at some of the research on meditation. And the reason for that is that gives us a place for the herbs to do their work, so that we can see what the herbs are trying to do and what a brilliant job they do at actually working on the very things that help us to focus and concentrate. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And I wonder how I can get, oh yeah, I think I can get rid of all of you. So, herbs to calm the mind and support the practice of meditation. And I put this little poem by Taylor Coleridge, because people think of herbs as things like, we all know how amazing ginger and cinnamon and so on, but we think of them as a sort of mainly working on a physiological level. And we all know, as Ayurvedic practitioners and herbalists, that you can't separate mind and body. But I think that the whole area of the spiritual realm of plants, we live on the planet with plants. We're all part of the cosmos, and we have a spiritual dimension to us, and so do the plants, and that we can resonate together on that level, just as we can on a mental level, an emotional level, and a physiological level. So if man would pass through paradise in a dream and have a flower presented to him as a pledge that his soul had really been there, if he found that flower in his hand when he awoke, aye, and what then? That's morning glory. So you might find that in paradise. So wouldn't we all love to feel like this when we're doing this or this? So I'd like to get rid of all those faces. That's better. So does your life sound like this? Fast-paced and often stressful, busy and too overstretched, juggling working and personal life, bombarded with sensory stimuli. Our lives are too full. I mean, I think maybe as herbalists and Ayurvedic practitioners, you're well aware of not being like this description, but I think this description describes an awful lot of people that we know, and our patients, and just life in general, that it's easy to lose touch with our inner selves and to be thrown off balance and feeling out of sorts and unwell. And it's clear that every thought, feeling, and experience that's generated in the mind corresponds to a cascade of physiological and chemical changes in the body. So the mind could be something that we think of that drives us crazy or makes us feel stress or troubles us or makes us feel under pressure. But actually, the good news is that actually the mind has also the potential to be a mirror of pure awareness, to shine the light of our true inner selves, the unconditioned world beyond space and time. To help balance the mind and the emotions so that we can experience that dimension of the mind, we need a means of quietening the endless chatter. And that is not easy. But the way to calm the endless chatter is we need to meditate. And it's seen that our best health asset is actually to meditate. In fact, Jon Kabat-Zinn said, meditate as if your life depended on it. And the quality of your life does depend on it. So we need to go within, back to the inner self, and listen to the silence within. And when everything is going crazy all about us and everybody's rushing here and rushing there, we have the potential to find a still place of calm. So where does the word meditation come from? In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, dhyana or dhyana is Sanskrit for meditation, and it means a refined meditative practice that requires deep mental concentration. Dhyana, from di meaning receptacle or mind, and yana meaning moving or going. So going into the receptacle, going into the mind. Jon Kabat-Zinn interestingly said that medicine and meditation come from the same root. Medicine means restoration of right inward measure, and meditation, perception of right inward measure. I thought this was fun. Sit in meditation for 20 minutes every day unless you're too busy, and then you should sit in it for an hour. So when we sit in meditation and we're quiet and we find that still place within, then we can actually become the observer as well as the observed, and we can actually observe ourselves, and we can observe the rise and fall of the breath and the movement of thoughts in the mind and feelings that arise and so on. But we can also discover all the different forces working within us and get that sense of being part of the cosmos, one with pure awareness. And just like Charaka, who I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with, says, one who sees equally the entire universe in his own self and his own self in the entire universe is in possession of true knowledge. So let's just flick through some of the health benefits of meditation. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, the benefits of meditation are to cultivate an inner source of happiness. And actually, one of the four the 4 aims of life, the first one is kama, which means happiness. And it's very hard to do anything unless you actually feel happy. But this is a happiness that's not to do with outer happiness and being made happy by the things outside of ourselves in the material world. This is actually an inner source of happiness as opposed to an outer source of happiness. It gives us the ability to digest and assimilate our experience, and actually, you know, for working through the things that all of us our experiences in life, and a lot of them we can see as challenging. It helps us to process the things that happen to us, good and bad. And in that way, it dissolves the seeds of karma. And it increases our feeling of connection to the cosmos, to the inner self, the outer world, other people, and engender a sense of wholeness and not isolation. And it draws our senses inward rather than being totally bombarded by everything in the world around us, cultivates sattva and helps us to balance sattva, rajas, and tamas in our lives. When you meditate, you produce tapaka kapha. The word tapaka means contentment. So it gives you the sense of strength and endurance that tapaka kapha gives you. You feel more resilient to stress, content, calm, stable, not being tossed around mentally and emotionally like a leaf in the wind. And it diminishes the strength of ahankara, which is the ego sense, the I sense, which is the thing that makes you feel separate from the world. From a scientific perspective, meditation has been seen by masses of research that's been done since mindfulness became so popular, thanks to people like Mark Williams in Oxford and John Kabat-Zinn in America. They've managed to perceive and does all sorts of research that's shown that meditation can increase mental and emotional stability, increase our resilience to stress, decrease difficult emotions such as anxiety, depression, anger, aggression, and so on, and help us to feel more empathetic and compassionate towards others. On a physiological level, it lowers the heart rate and blood pressure, reduces the secretion of stress hormones, including cortisol, improves our immunity, improves airflow through the lungs, decreases inflammation, and reduces pain. How has this actually come about? And actually, they've been doing scans on people who've been meditating. And even on people who've done that 8-week course in mindfulness, they've seen changes before and after in the shape of the brain and the activity of the brain. And so neuroplasticity means the ability for the brain to change. And this can happen after only 8 weeks. So it increases our brainwave coherence and stimulates neurogenesis, which is the formation of new nerve cells. So research has shown that meditation increases the amount of gray matter in the hippocampus and the frontal areas of the brain. And the gray matter is the thing that actually tends to diminish as we get older and is associated with cognitive decline, loss of memory, focus, and so on. And by having more gray matter, it also engenders more positive emotions, more emotional stability, better ability to focus and actually to be able to concentrate and meditate. So it's a sort of vicious circle in a way. Better sensory perception, better decision-making ability and self-control. And in terms of the brain waves, meditation stops the brain from processing the info that comes into us through our senses as actively as it normally would. And so it decreases the beta waves and increases alpha and theta waves, which are the ones that happen when we're more relaxed. And actually that relaxation engenders more creativity. So this is just to say that they've looked at different parts of the brain, including the parietal lobe and the thalamus and the reticular formation and the amygdala. And these are really parts of the brain that are responsible for the inflow of sensory information and our response to it. So that meditation actually slows down the rate at which sensory input comes into us, and also calms down our response to them, all those impressions. So the gut-brain connection, everybody's talking about it. It's the new thing. They say that there has been a new era of science that's dawned with the realization of the gut-brain connection. They used to call the gut the second brain. Now they're calling it the first brain. So inside your gut is this thing called the enteric nervous system. I'm sure you all know about this, but it's a network of 100 million neurons that are embedded in the gut wall, in the cells of the gut wall. And there's been a lot of talk about the vagus nerve, which is one of the largest of those nerves connecting the gut and the brain. And then within the gut, you've got billions of gut bacteria that are producing hundreds of neurochemicals, including GABA and serotonin and dopamine and melatonin, etc. And the neurons in the gut use these neurochemicals to regulate physiological and mental processes, including our focus, our ability to focus, to remember, to learn, memory, mood, and so on. So the microbiome then play a major role in our ability to concentrate and learn, which of course is going to help meditation, memory and focus, regulation of anxiety and mood and cognition and so on. So the strategy, our strategy then for enhancing brain function, as well as treating neurological problems and nervous system and mental and emotional disorders, is balancing the gut microbiome as well as the mind. And of course, and the reason for talking about this is that when we're using herbs to enhance the practice of meditation, we can be working on herbs for the gut, herbs for the microbiota, herbs to help balance the microbiota. And we can also combine those with herbs directly for the heart and the mind, which is what we're going to come on to. So the gut-brain axis, it's two-way trafficked. The nervous system directly affects the microbiome, and the microbiome has a significant influence on the brain. So it's two-way traffic. The microbiota release molecules that influence brain chemistry, including the regulation of neurotransmitters. And these affect our ability to focus, to concentrate, our memory, ability to learn, and so on, and mood. And what they found is that even the mildest stress alters the balance of the microbiota in the gut, which then can trigger mood and behavioral changes and affect our ability to focus and concentrate. This is just, oops, I didn't mean to do that. This is a diagram, and all those words, basically what they're saying is that the hypothalamus, through corticotrophin releasing hormone, directly affects, it's a part of the brain that's affected by mood and stress and emotion and so on. That's the central driver of the stress hormone system, which is called the HPA axis. So what happens is the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is the master gland that then sends messages to all the other endocrine glands in the body, which includes actually the thyroid, the adrenals, and the sex hormones. So then these stress hormones affect the gut, and then the gut microbiota are involved. And so the gut microbiota play an important role in the activity of the HPA axis. And overactivation, so these messages going from the hypothalamus to the pituitary to the stress hormones that then affects the gut, are all playing a major role in anxiety and depression, and just disturbance of the mind that can disturb our ability to focus and concentrate. Serotonin is just something that we should mention, because serotonin and GABA are the two main neurotransmitters that people are aware of and talk about. And of course, serotonin is known as the happy hormone. And we used to think that serotonin was produced in the brain, and we now know that 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut and relies on the gut flora for its production. And it regulates bowel movements, it regulates mood, appetite, sleep, cognitive function, ability to focus, and also immunity, bone development, as well as cardiac function. And low levels of serotonin are linked, of course, everybody knows, to depression, but also to panic attacks, OCD, social anxiety disorders, increases the likelihood for people to get PTSD and have cognitive problems, cardiovascular problems, obesity, diabetes, and osteoporosis. GABA is the anti-anxiety hormone. And so there are lots of different strains of bacteria apparently that produce GABA, and Lactobacillus rhamnosus is the most famous one. In fact, people are now taking Lactobacillus rhamnosus to calm their anxiety and actually can have quite a significant effect. What the impact in time of taking single bacteria by themselves to right a problem like this, I'm not sure about. So I generally think that if you're going to take extra bacteria, it's better to be doing them in foods like kefir or yogurt or different cultured foods rather than taking them singly, because I don't know if we know what the impact of that's going to be in time. But anyway, GABA has a calming, quieting effect on us, and it reduces the activity of neurons to which it binds. And it stops them from being overexcited. And decreased levels of GABA are associated with a range of different mental health disorders, including depression, anxiety, immune problems, and so on. Interestingly, there are lots of herbs that increase GABA, and also tea. And after all, tea is a herb, green tea and white tea, and they say oolong tea is really good for increasing GABA. And it's interesting that if somebody has a shock or they're stressed or upset, people generally say, sit down, I'll make you a cup of tea. They don't say, sit down, I'll give you a cup of coffee. But they both contain caffeine, both coffee and tea contain caffeine. But because tea has got so much GABA, it actually, and tannins that stop the caffeine from being absorbed, it seems to have an anti-anxiety effect rather than an overstimulating effect. So meditation and neurotransmitters. Meditation has been seen to increase serotonin, the happy hormone, decrease cortisol, the stress hormone, boost levels of DHEA, the longevity hormone, improve the calming effect of GABA, increase endorphins, the happy hormones, increase growth rate that naturally decrease with age, so that it can be a longevity thing, and boost melatonin that helps us to sleep and also regulates mood. And as Deepak Chopra says, the mind exerts the deepest influence on the body, and freedom from sickness depends upon contacting our own awareness, bringing it into balance and extending that balance to the body. But meditation isn't that easy. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So says the Bhagavad Gita. Finding stillness can require a lot of support. And I'm sure that all of you who have tried or practiced meditation have experienced the same thing. I've had so many patients that say, oh yes, I've tried meditation, but I can't do it. And I say, well, actually, the word practice is, we're supposed to practice. It's practicing meditation. And that practice of bringing the mind back to that place of stillness, or to an awareness of the breath, or contacting your senses, or whatever it is that you choose to focus on in your meditation, the practice of bringing the mind back is actually the thing that seems to have all those amazing effects on the shape of the brain and the activity of the brain and so on. But still, we could do with support. And the ancient sages that give us so much wisdom of Ayurveda and yoga and so on have given us a whole just eons of support in the shape, as I said, of Ayurveda and yoga, pranayama, and so on, to cultivate awareness. They also gave us herbs. Yogis in India have also used herbs to help prepare their minds for meditation for thousands of years, and we can too. So let me just stop the share. Any questions so far? Is that clear to everybody? I suppose everybody knows all of that.
We seem to be okay at the moment, Annie. I think everyone's just hanging on your every word. But no, I think unless anyone, if you've got questions, please put them in the chat box. But at the moment, we're okay. We've had a sound issue, but that's it. No questions. So.
Oh, sound issue, you couldn't hear me?
No, it wasn't for everyone. It was just one lady, and that's been sorted out. Everything else is fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, back to the herbs then.
Back to the herbs, please.
Okay. Herbs, flowers and herbs. Many flowers are herbs and many herbs are flowers. Flowers have a mysterious and subtle influence upon the feelings, not unlike some strains of music. They relax the tenseness of the mind and the emotions and the spirit and help us to focus. So we can invite nature's subtle intelligence into our meditation practice. So what I was saying at the beginning of this is that herbs go way beyond the physical and the mental. They can affect our state of consciousness. They calm the mind, lift the spirits, ease tension, ease difficult emotions. There are different herbs for different emotions, for different states of mind that we can go into a little bit as we go on. They have the ability to influence the gut and neurotransmitters, and they are really brilliant at supporting meditation practice and enhancing our spiritual life. And I'm sure you know loads of them. So in that picture, you can see lavender and roses, and we're going to talk about those. And if you just look in your garden, you're likely to have thyme and sage and oregano and maybe lemon balm and mint, or you might see them in the supermarket or the health food shop or whatever. All of those are classified as herbs that have an affinity for the heart and the mind and help to calm the mind and enhance meditation. And then things that you might find growing wild, like wild pansy or hawthorn or wild roses and lime flowers and daisies and so on, also have an ability to affect the heart and the mind. So in Ayurveda, we call herbs that have an affinity with the mind Medya rasayanas. Rasayana means rejuvenative, the path of rejuvenation in a way. So these are herbs that actually is interesting. They're called rasayanas and rejuvenatives because that's exactly what they do. They are amazing at rejuvenating, enlivening the mind and actually helping to protect it against the effects of aging. And you'll see as we go through that Medya rasayanas, they're also, I suppose in Western herbal medicine, you'd call them nervines. And a lot of them are the same. So you might find that as we go through the herbs, and I've got quite a few herbs that I want to talk about, that as we go through, that a lot of it is repeated, that they do the same thing. So how on earth do you choose which ones to use? So I think that part of this discussion is to look at why would you use one and not another? But what they have in common is that they both work on the mind and the intellect. Sorry, not both, all. They all have a nourishing and supportive effect on the nervous system, which then affects the mind. That nervous system may be by affecting that they affect the gut, or they might work on the brain directly. And it's really interesting to look at how many of the herbs that are classified as Medya rasayanas or nervines actually work on the gut. So is it that they work on the gut and in that way affect the brain, or do they work on the brain directly as well? It's hard to say. Some of them, or a lot of them, provide specific molecular nutrients for the brain. So it might be that they have lots of calcium, magnesium, essential fatty acids, and so on. And they all promote mental health and are used to treat mental, emotional, and behavioral problems. And they all help us to be tranquil and calm. And those are pictures of my tincture making at home. And these are things that I will have collected from the garden this year. On the left, you've got yarrow. And then on the right or in the middle, you can see chamomile and marigolds and lavender and sage. All of those could be used for either the gut or the brain. So medioracyanas, to continue with them, enhance mental function and intellectual ability. They improve cognition, our ability to learn, our memory, our concentration. Most of them have an adaptogenic effect. So that's why I wanted to refer to what the HPA axis is and how important that is to our mental emotional health. So most adaptogenic herbs work on the HPA axis and help to balance all those stress messages flooding through the system, and they reduce cortisol. And by working on the HPA axis, they work on our nervous system, our hormonal system, and our immune system, and increase our resilience to physical, environmental, mental, and emotional stress, every kind of stress on the body. Whatever stress it is, they enhance your ability to deal with it. And in that sense, they help to keep you calm. It's almost as if that going back to that idea of Tapaka Kapha enables you to feel strong and resilient in the face of all the different challenges in your life. And that's exactly what these adaptogenic herbs that work on the HPA can do. And many of them have rejuvenative effects and help to slow the effects of aging. And that herb in the picture, in case you don't know, is Siberian Ginseng. So some very amazing medioracyanas, nervine tonics are there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to pick out some of them that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about ashwagandha and bacopa and chorus calamus root, and chamomile and frankincense and ginkgo and gotu kola and holy basil and lavender and rose and rosemary and vervain. So Ashley, did somebody say something? No, okay.
Could I please ask you to remain muted during the presentation? Thank you. And Annie, while we are here, there was one question. Basically, the question was, can they use herbs in the form of essential oils? What's your view on that?
If a herb is very rich in volatile oils, like lavender or rose or rosemary, then it may be that most of the therapeutic effect is coming from the volatile oils. And the volatile oils very often have an antioxidant effect and a nervine effect. So if it's an aromatic herb, then you could actually derive a lot of benefit from inhaling the volatile oils. So I think that putting oils in your burner in the meditation room is a really great idea. Things like lavender, rosemary, tulsi would be a great idea. And then there are other ones, mostly, those adaptogenic, nourishing nervine roots like ashwagandha, shatavari, Siberian ginseng, and licorice and so on. You can't use those in the burner. You have to take them.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Annie.
So there is another category of rasayanas, rejuvenatives, that also have an effect and play their part in supporting our meditation practice. And those are hridaya rasayanas. And they have an affinity for the heart, which could either be the emotional heart or the physical or the physical heart and the cardiovascular system, or the emotional heart. In Western herbal medicine, we call them cordials. And there are things like rosemary and rose and lemon balm and so on that are classified as cordials. And cordial comes from cor, which means heart. And a cordial would be something that warmed the heart or affected your heart, like you would have it if you were feeling downhearted or disheartened or heartbroken or had heartache. And in fact, that word cor, that means heart, used to refer to matters of the heart, and it's now car. And we talk about cardiac rather than cardiac things when we refer to the heart. So hridayas enhance our ability to tolerate physical and emotional stress on the heart, but it's more sort of not things in the mind like challenging work stress or too many things to do or being distracted by our mobile phones and so on. That's more mental stuff. This is grief and heartache and things that we feel. which also, those kind of things are likely to disturb our meditation practice, just as well as distractions in the mind. So we need both. So good examples of heart cordials, hawthorn, which is one of the main heart remedies that's used in Western herbal medicine. And then of course we've got Arjuna, which is used as a major heart remedy in Ayurvedic medicine. And then things like Gotu Kola, you can see Tulsi again, rose, rosemary, lemon balm, coriander, interestingly, hibiscus, saffron, motherwort and cinnamon, and bala. So let's first talk about some media herbs. And first, let's talk about chamomile, because everybody knows chamomile. And chamomile, people think of as a nice herb that helps you to go to sleep at night. So we know that it's calming. And of course, it was immortalized by Beatrix Potter. And Peter Rabbit had chamomile tea when he got back from Mr. McGregor's, when he was in trouble. And he had chamomile tea to put him to sleep, to hit before bed. Actually, chamomile is way more than that. Chamomile is one of the best anti-pitta herbs there is, I think. It's sedative and relaxant. So what's the difference between sedative and relaxant? Sedative means it calms the mind, and relaxant means it also relaxes tense muscles. It lifts the spirits. Amazingly, it increases serotonin and GABA and reduces cortisol. And it's really good for calming anxiety, just anxious feelings and thoughts and so on. It works on the heart and the mind. And it's really good for any kind of stress-related physiological problem, particularly those affecting digestion, because it's a brilliant digestive. So if you've got things like gastritis, indigestion, heartburn, even peptic ulcers, chamomile is the remedy. It's a really good pain relieving herb. And so that could be pain on a physiological level, but pain on an emotional level as well, or mental. But good, really good for pain like headaches and migraines and period pains and cramps and so on. Really good for balancing acne. So it's not hot, actually it's bitter and cooling, but it's really good for regulating acne and really good for clearing armor. And it's full of antimicrobial essential oils. So this is something that you could put in a burner, and really good for killing off unfriendly microorganisms in the gut, which is going to make a big difference to the neurotransmitters. One of the best anti-pitta herbs for pain and inflammation, and really good for high saddhika pitta. High saddhika pitta means you're going to be pushing yourself, driving yourself. You could be giving yourself a hard time, never good enough, being over perfectionistic, suffering from low self-worth, having to drive yourself to be better all the time. You could be irritable, intolerant, not suffering fools gladly, angry. Those kind of things disturb your meditation practice. You know, if you feel that somebody's wronged you, or actually you got it wrong, and then you're sitting down to meditate and there's something bothering you from the day before, or you're sitting down in the evening, and it's hard to let go of these things, especially if you're a pitta person and need to get it right. So chamomile is just the most brilliant. I think it's one of the best herbs for pitta, that along with California poppy and rose and vervain. So really good for a tendency to be critical, self-critical, full of righteous indignation, and highly sensitive. So it could be highly sensitive to criticism, to what other people say, even angry looks or whatever, but also hypersensitive to pain, physiological pain. So Chorus Calamus is a brilliant media herb. I don't know if any of you have ever used it. Chorus Calamus, it's called a marginal plant. It grows on the edge of ponds here in the UK, and probably actually grows it's a very sacred herb actually in America, and is used in Native American traditions, I think, for sort of rites of passage. And just to warn you, I do remember way back in probably the 70s anyway, when I was in my early 20s, I remember going to somebody's house and he'd written a book about Acorus calamus. I think his name was George Andrews. And this was in a place near Glastonbury. So suffice to say that, you know, you could have all sorts of interesting things going on in the 70s in Glastonbury. In fact, I was living in Glastonbury in a community. But anyway, we went to George Andrews' house, and there on a plate, he had a lovely pond in the garden. There on a plate were these Sweetflag roots, and he'd wash them and scrub them, and he chopped them up into small pieces. And he said, help yourself, if you like. He said something like, 1 or 2 bites is really good for your digestion. It's warming, and it's going to really settle your digestion, and it'll make just settle your food and make you feel good. A few more bites and you'll be feeling really relaxed and kind of the mind clear and so on. And then a few more bites after that, and this is what I'm warning you about, that he said that you could be seeing visions of the future or have prophetic dreams, or you might even start to hallucinate. Actually, I've never known anybody hallucinate with Acorus calamus. And I was thinking, well, it would be really interesting to have a clear mind in a sort of meditative state and enhance inner vision and so on. So I started to chew the root, but actually it's a mixture of pungent and bitter. And the pungency is quite nice to start with, but actually it gets so bitter that I'm much better at bitter herbs now, but I wasn't terribly good at coping with the bitterness, so I didn't actually get very far. But I do use it a lot in my practice. And it's a renowned herb for the mind, and really a great herb for enhancing meditation that's been used for centuries by yogis and seers. And the pungency is really warming, and it's a great herb for the gut, and it promotes circulation to the brain as well, and is really good for enhancing memory, focus, concentration, mental clarity and awareness. And it's the herb for promoting communication and self-expression. And I use it a lot for people who are not clear about what they want to do in their life. They don't quite know how to express themselves. Udana Vata is everything from the world inside of us being expressed to the outer world. Pranavata is about us taking in all the information from the world outside of ourselves into ourselves. So how do we express ourselves? And if you have trouble expressing yourself, actually it could be upsetting and confusing, and gives you, it's hard to make a decision about what you want to do in life. So Acorus calamus is the herb for Udana Vata. And it's often combined with Gotu Kola to help balance the more warming properties of it, and also to have an effect on the mind.
Matt has a question. He mentioned apparently the herb is, oops, now my screen has changed, has been found to contain an alkaloid that might be carcinogenic. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, well, so the acerone and beta acerone are it says at the bottom, they're the ones that are credited with the serotonin and nervine effects, but actually you have to be careful of those, and you can't take a lot of it. So this has been used traditionally as a sort of a herb of initiation, but in small amounts it's been used for centuries and doesn't seem to be linked to that. I think maybe if you took too much for too long. So every book that you read about it, who talks about Acorus calamus, they'll put warnings at the bottom about only to be used in small quantities, not for long periods of time, and so on. So I think it's a short-term herb. And I think that the thing about some of these things like acerone and beta acerone, when they're taken out of context, out of the plant, and then the reason that they've associated it maybe with toxicity or cancer or whatever is when they feed extracts, single constituents, to animals in experimental animals, and then they develop tumors or something. But I think the fact that this has been used for thousands of years in Ayurveda, that I trust the Ayurvedic, that I think small amounts, actually, it's interesting that a lot of herbs that have a direct effect on the mind or the brain are used as nasya, and they're used in an oil medium, and the oil in nasya has an affinity with the oils of the brain. And I think that now, in fact, they're even looking at drugs to be used for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and so on, and thinking about putting them in an oil medium because it might actually work better on the brain. So I wonder, by using Nassia of Acorus calamus, or Vacha, it's called Vacha Nassia, that you might be bypassing the digestive tract, and then you wouldn't need to worry so much about the potentially carcinogenic effect of the acerone and beta acerone.
No, that's a very good comment, to use it as Nassia oil.
Annie, can I just ask one question before? I think that they're making a comment, but just in case. Julia says, Matthew Wood says that chamomile is for babies of all ages. So I don't know, Julia, are you saying yes, it is, or is that a question? But can you just comment on that before we whiz past chamomile?
Oh, me? Well, when Matthew Wood says for babies of all age, you know, if you're a baby, then it could be that if you're an adult and somebody called you a baby, they could say you're a crybaby, or you're making a fuss about the pain, or, you know, you're hypersensitive and you're making a big fuss, so you're crying like a baby. So it's for people, chamomile is the remedy for people who are oversensitive to pain, who are oversensitive to criticism, oversensitive to, why are you looking at me like that? Or you obviously don't like me, or, you know, just being hypersensitive and always, and sort of almost to the point of paranoia. And so babies, you know, they cry when they've got colic, and especially pitta babies, you know, actually maybe he does know about pitta, actually, because I remember I taught Ayurveda on a master's degree in Glasgow, and he was actually in my class. So he does know all about Ayurveda, but he could have said chamomile is for pitta babies of all age, because it's just such a brilliant pitta remedy, whether it's for a baby or an adult, and for every kind of inflammatory process. And for, you know, when pitta babies are more likely to be critical of everything. I'm hungry, I'm starving, I've got a wet nappy, and they, you know, they get angry and irritable, and they mind things because everything's supposed to be perfect. And I should think their nappies probably do make their bottom sore more than other babies, because, you know, everything about them is so acidic. So I think that that's the same whether you're a baby or an adult. And so every kind of inflammatory problem that a baby gets, also every kind of inflammatory problem that an adult gets, the same. You can use it for both. But it's been a herb that's been associated with babies. It's for teething and conjunctivitis and babies' eczema. It's a great antihistamine. So it's been associated with babies, but I think the point he's trying to make is that it's for adults just as well as babies.
Okay,
and
that's great.
Adults that cry.
All right, I'll go and get some.
Okay, just we take just one more question because we have got so much to get through, but just quickly, there's a question in the chat. Anyone mentioned the provider of Sweetflag in the UK? I guess you have indirectly answered the question already, that it's quite widely available in general, but would you recommend any provider of the Sweetflag of the within the UK here?
I think most herbal suppliers, you know, Avicenna, or Rutland Organics, or the Organic Herb Trading Company. I mean, there are masses of Panacea. Most of the herbal suppliers will supply, it's called Acorus calamus, Sweetflag.
I think I've seen it on the organic herb one for sure. So, yeah.
And it grows here, you know, it's a local herb. Interestingly, it's used all over the world in sacred traditions, but it actually grows here. And you can grow it as a marginal in your pond. And you'll find it growing well in ponds as well.
Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.
Right, back to the screen. So, Acorus calamus. So, combination of bitter and pungent is really good for the digestion, raises the agni, clears the armor, sharpens the mind. It's really good for congestion because it's pungent and bitter, and it's very good for mental fog. So if you're having trouble kind of focusing, or your mind is kind of sleepy and heavy when you're trying to meditate, it's brilliant. And I just put here in interest, in China, the powder is blown into the nose of coma patients to restore consciousness. And you can chew a small piece of the root or use the powder as a snuff for mental fatigue. And it's interesting, you know, talking about toxicity, I'd forgotten this, that traditionally in India, they used to mix the powder with ghee and given to newborn babies on the 7th day to enhance their brain function and speech. And they also used to mix it with Brahmi, actually one Brahmi or the other, and purified gold, and mix it in a powder and then make a little paste of it and put it on the mother's hand. And the indication was 1 lick twice a day. The baby had to lick the powder. So it's a really great nervine for feeling anxious and kind of insecure. It's a good anti-vata remedy and anti-kapha. So really good for sort of sluggishness and fatigue, poor memory, nervous stability, feeling low and depressed. It detoxifies brain tissue. It's really good for armor and mental armor. And there you are, you can use it as nassia for nervous problems and sinus congestion, or in a neti pot. Vervain, this is another lovely nervine that grows in this country. It's got a sort of this small, rather insignificant flower, and it's actually quite an insignificant plant, but when you get near, you realize how sweet and beautiful it is. But it is the most amazing nervine. It's also bitter and cooling. So straight away, when we know that it's bitter and cooling, we know that this could be a really good herb for pitta. Really good for tension and irritability. It's really good for increasing resilience to stress. It's got antispasmodic actions, which means that it relaxes tense muscles. And it's really good for easing stress-related muscle tension and pain, and for promoting sleep. This is for people who are pitta people, who drive themselves too hard, who always need to be doing better, who need to work harder, get more done, get through their to-do list and so on, and have a tendency to burn themselves out and then suffer from kind of nervous exhaustion and that kind of heat that can go with nervous exhaustion. So they start to get inflammatory problems, could be inflammatory gut problems, eye problems, or an inflammatory problem like a migraine and so on. And it's a really great remedy for stress-related, pitta-related problems, such as high blood pressure, not being able to get off to sleep, feeling low and depressed, and just sort of neurasthenia or feeling nervously run down. It's the workaholics herb. And it's for people who have driven themselves so hard, even over the weekend. And they say it's for Monday morning feeling like, oh no, got to go back to work again. Oh, can I face it? If you feel like that, take Vervain. So the flavonoids and the tannins in Vervain have an antioxidant effect. Now, anything that's antioxidant, all of these herbs that we're going to talk about contain antioxidants, which means that they're all anti-inflammatory. They all protect the brain and the nervous system and lots of other structures in the body, but we're talking about the mind and the brain here, from free radical damage and oxidative stress. And they have neuroprotective effects. When you have something that's neuroprotective, it means that it protects them from free radical damage that could be caused by any kind of neurotoxins in the atmosphere, from the effect of stress on the brain. And it just helps you to be more resilient to the effects of every kind of stress: mental stress, emotional stress, environmental stress, pollution stress, even things like electromagnetic frequencies and so on. And it's a really great analgesic and anti-inflammatory. And it would be because it's a really good anti-pitta herb, like chamomile. Interestingly, it's really good for things like epilepsy. And what's amazing about it also is that it improves brain damage after a stroke, because it has the ability to promote the development of new blood vessels in the brain. And it also improves the ability of cells in the brain to produce energy. And so that the blood supply going to the brain helps with that, because obviously the blood cells require oxygen to do this. So it's a really good herb for sort of revitalizing the brain and for neurogenesis, which again is what we said, that meditation had the ability to repair damaged nerves. And so herbs like Vervain can support this. So the two work together, the herbs and the meditation. And this is herbs that contain antioxidants, also really good at protecting against these amyloid plaques that build up in the brain and predispose to Alzheimer's. So I'm sure you all wanted to talk about Bacopa, and I know that was a question that somebody sent in advance about what was the difference between the Brahmis, and we will come into it. So this is one of the Brahmis, Bacopa Monnieri, and named because Brahman, it gives you it enhances the ability to concentrate and then have that knowledge of Brahman. And it's, of course, it's a herb to enhance our spiritual lives. And it's been used for centuries, thousands of years probably, in India and China to enhance brain function and to treat a whole range of different mental and emotional and neurological problems. Interestingly, they're both creeping herbs, and they both come from India, but you can grow both of them here. So both Hridaya and Medya. So really good for improving focus, memory, concentration, mental clarity, good for calming mental turbulence, aiding meditation, increases resilience to stress. This is a great herb for improving our mental ability to deal with, or our ability to deal with mental stress, but also our ability to deal with physiological stress, like high altitude, intense cold, working too hard, being exposed to temperatures too hot, too cold, wind, rain, just hardship. This is a herb for hardship. And it's adaptogenic, which means it works on the HPA axis. Really good for nervous exhaustion and sort of feeling just nervously run down and then becoming sort of depressed. It's really good for the heart. It has a cardiotonic effect. And it helps to regulate brain activity, like meditation, and it aids the production of neurotransmitters, as does meditation, like dopamine and serotonin. Now, this is important for people who want to know the difference between the Brahmis. Bacopa is Rasayana for Vata, and what you'll see is that Gotu Kola, Centella hydrocotyle, is Rasayana for Pitta. So this is really good for people who, through excess Vata, exhaust themselves just by running around, being blown around like in the wind, like she is, doing too much, being anxious, insecure, nervy, etc., etc. And the bacosides that occur in Bacopa are antioxidant, and in the same way that we were saying before, they have the ability to protect the nervous system from free radical damage. This is a really great herb for improving transmission of impulses between neurons. So it actually is supporting what Vata does, because Vata is responsible for the movement of nerve impulses throughout the nervous system. And this is brilliant because it regenerates synapses and repairs damaged neurons, making it easier to learn and remember new information. And it improves the speed of visual information, so our ability to learn to take in information, to process, and memory consolidation. But at the same time, so it's sort of enhancing brain function, but in that sense, it sort of enhances alertness, but it calms the mind and calms mental turbulence and all that kind of Vata agitation, restlessness in the mind. It's brilliant. Ginkgo next. So ginkgo is also a brilliant Medya herb, and it's probably one of the most ancient herbs that there is. And that, in fact, they found fossils with these beautiful biloba, two-lobed leaves that go back 270 million years. And actually, one tree can grow for over 1,000 years. So absolutely sort of ancient. And this is an ancient herb that is really good for helping us to stop feeling ancient, because it's rejuvenative. Really good for memory and concentration and focus and brain function and so on. Really good for helping to prevent loss of cognitive function and things like Alzheimer's. Improves blood flow to the brain, enhances oxygen utilization, improves alertness, and so on. It's a Hridaya as well as a Media Rasayana. That's a picture of a tree that's in a friend's garden down the road. So this is just about all the antioxidant properties of it and how it actually protects against free radical damage, and so slows the effect of aging. And it also protects the other parts, like the eyes, from oxidative damage and so on, and used for macular degeneration and so on, and cataracts and diabetic retinopathy. So it's also a brilliant herb for the eyes. It's a brilliant herb for anxiety and mood disorders. And it's a circulatory herb. It improves blood flow through the heart to the brain, stops blood clots, and helps recovery after heart attacks and strokes and injury to the head. You could wax lyrical about ginkgo forever. Lavender, lovely herb to put in your burner, as I said earlier. This is what they say is a balancing heart. It's balancing. If you're feeling tired, it'll wake you up. If you're feeling stressed and agitated, it'll calm you down. It's a really good herb for sort of enhancing mental clarity and focus and just calming mental turbulence. So it improves memory, attention span, concentration, really good for anxiety and sort of pain, headaches, anything related to tension, indigestion, gut spasm, muscle tension, neck ache, headaches, neuralgia, and a great herb for helping you to sleep. So you could use it either to restore energy or to calm you down. It's got those both actions, which also rosemary has. It's cooling and is very good for, again, disturbance of Saddhika Pitta. But all those antispasmodic, relaxing volatile oils are also really good for, it's an anulomana and really good for balancing Apana Vata and Vata. But the cooling side of it is really good for all that kind of mental and emotional angst to do with not being good enough, and the irritability and the low self-esteem and migraines and headaches and all those pitta things. But it's also good for the kapha type lethargy, and it's really good for clearing phlegm and cutting through that kind of foggy mindedness, colds and coughs and catarrh congestion. It's a fantastic antimicrobial for the gut. So it raises the agni, clears the ama, combats unfriendly microorganisms in the gut. Really good for increasing resilience to stress. It's a great herb for when you're feeling nervously run down and overwhelmed. It improves GABAergic neurotransmission. So basically it increases GABA, and GABA is the thing that reduces anxiety and tension. It also increases serotonin. It's really good for pain. It's a fantastic healer. So I think people have become familiar with lavender for burns. You can use neat lavender oil on a burn, but it's a fantastic wound healer. And the antioxidant side of the volatile oils is neuroprotective and protects the brain and other parts of the body from damage from free radical damage and poor circulation and everything to do with the aging process. Inhaling the volatile oil acts on the hypothalamus and the limbic system. So the hypothalamus, is the part of the brain that is affecting the pituitary and that whole HPA axis. So lavender oil is really good for sort of soothing the messages that are going from the hypothalamus to the pituitary. Siberian ginseng is one of the most amazing. Did somebody say something?
That was me, Annie. Just before we go on, there is a question. Well, the question box has gone again now. Let me find it. I can't remember who it's from, but she says, are there any that can reduce serotonin? I don't know if it's her or, yeah, let me find the question. Are there any flowers, herbs that help reduce high serotonin, please? I have been tested and told I have this. So as soon as you just mentioned serotonin, I thought I'd ask this question.
Oh, I don't know. Herbs are generally, what we're generally thinking of doing is increasing serotonin, but it might be that since the gut flora are responsible for producing 95% of serotonin, it sounds like if you've got too much in relation to the other neurotransmitters, that it's a gut flora problem.
Okay.
And so maybe working on gut flora might be a good idea. And you can work, any culinary herb or spice is full of volatile oils that help combat unfriendly microorganisms in the gut. The best spice or herb that there is for regulating the gut flora, research has found to be garlic. And I know not everybody likes garlic, and garlic is thought of as either rajasic and then tamasic, and so not good for if you want to be a sage or a seer or whatever. But still, apart from that, garlic is the most amazing herb, because there's been a question about, well, if herbs are antimicrobial and that means that they kill off infection, how do we know that they're only killing off the baddies in the gut and they're not also killing off the good bacteria? So they've been setting out to research this, and what they found is generally they don't. But the herb that was best was garlic, because garlic is excellent at killing off the bad, unfriendly microorganisms in the gut, but it's a prebiotic and feeds the good ones. Andrographis also did really well, and oregano. So number 1 was garlic, number 2 was oregano, number 3 was andrographis.
Okay,
so maybe it's a gut flora issue, the excess serotonin in relation to the other neurotransmitters, but I honestly don't know. But I'm not sure that I know of herbs that actually decrease serotonin, because everybody's always wanting to increase serotonin.
Okay, that's why I thought I'd ask it there. And just one thing as we're going past, and I'll let you go on again. Someone's saying, are there no contraindications for these herbs? So if you know of any while you're doing them, will you kind of say that as we're going past then?
Well, I think the best thing to do is, because all of these have qualifications, and you should always check out, if you're going to use herbs, you should always check them out. I know a very good book called Dispensing with Tradition.
I know that book. I have it here.
Yes. So
anybody that's looking at this screen, here it is. So yeah, yes. I would suggest that one.
Yes. So in Dispensing with Tradition, it'll talk about all the contraindications, herb-drug interactions, and so on. So it's a very good question, Sue, because actually, when it comes to taking herbs, you need to be looking at other drugs that you might be taking, or contraindications of other symptoms or illnesses that you may have. So before embarking on using any of these herbs, you should check them out first. So have a look at Dispensing with Tradition, or you can look online, herb-drug interactions if you're taking drugs, or contraindications.
It's gone in the chat box now. So whoever asked that question, sorry, I didn't read out your name, but I think we can go on again now. Sorry.
Okay, well, we're flicking through quite fast and we'll get there, I think. So not to worry, but I'll speed up. Actually, I have to say, I don't really want to speed up too much past Siberian ginseng. Siberian ginseng is the adaptogen. So in the Cold War, in the 60s, when Russia wanted to be a superpower, they wanted to find a way of making their workforce the best workforce. They wanted to have them strong, resilient, so that they didn't get ill from spending too much time down coal mines, out in the freezing cold, deep sea fishing, working in freezing conditions in Siberia, working at high altitude. They wanted to keep their workforce resilient. And so they were looking at all sorts of different plants that could be used to enable them to adapt to their circumstances, to stresses of all sorts of kinds, which is where this word adaptogen came from. And they, after all the research that they did, the one that was the superstar was Siberian ginseng, Eleutherococcus senticosus. And it's been, the amount of research papers that there are is absolutely credible, but it is the herb for increasing resilience to stress, mental stress, emotional stress, environmental stress, every kind of stress that there is, stress of poisons in the body. These neuroprotective herbs, or adaptogenic herbs, they protect you from things that would otherwise push you out of balance, affect your immune system, your nervous system, your energy, and so on, and help you to be resilient in the face of challenges, which we all need. So this is really good for balancing the HPA axis that works on the nervous system, the hormonal system, the immune system. It's a fantastic herb for enhancing immunity, speeding healing of wounds, and so on, improving blood flow to the brain. So it kind of it wakes you up. It's a really good wakey herb if you're feeling like sluggish in the morning to do your meditation, or you've got sort of mental fog, and it's really good for improving cognitive function and mental stamina, alertness, but actually keeping you calm. And it's the best herb, well, one of the best herbs for preventing immuno and nervous depletion from any kind of intense mental or emotional or physiological experience, and helps us to cope with any kind of adverse physical condition, which includes drugs, injury, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, jet lag, carcinogens, and so on. The antioxidants protect us from free radical damage, and so they help to prevent things, cognitive decline and things like Alzheimer's in the elderly. They help to protect the bones and reduce the tendency to osteoporosis. Estrogenic, so it's really good in menopause. It's really good for learning problems, things like ADD and ADHD. It boosts serotonin levels. Now, somebody asked me a question earlier, which was, if you don't want to use ashwagandha because it's too warming for pitta, which it can be, in some cases, it can actually be contraindicated in people with high pitta. This is the remedy, because Siberian ginseng it does so many things that ashwagandha does. And ashwagandha is a brilliant herb for the HPA axis, as is Siberian ginseng. But this is cooling, and it's tridoshic. So you can use it for all three doshas. You don't need to worry about ashwagandha increasing pitta, because this is a really good anti-pitta remedy. So that answers that. So let's look at herbs for the heart. Rosemary is a Hridaya and a Media herb. This is traditionally called in Western herbal medicine a cordial. A cordial calms the mind and lifts the spirits. It's for heartache and so on. And for anybody that knows the taste and the smell of rosemary, as soon as you taste it and you smell it, it wakes you up. So I very often use Siberian ginseng and rosemary for people who say that they don't want to give up coffee because they feel too sleepy in the morning and they need the coffee to get them going. Give them Siberian ginseng and rosemary, and it really enlivens and clears the mind. It's refreshing and rejuvenating, but it's like lavender, as I said earlier, that it's really relaxing, but also stimulating at the same time. So it's very good for meditation practice because it's the memory herb, the focus herb. And Shakespeare knew all about rosemary when he's had Ophelia say, here's rosemary for remembrance, I pray thee, love, remember. So this is the memory herb. And the reason that it's such a good memory herb is because of its antioxidant properties of the volatile oils. So this is another really good herb to put in your burner in your meditation room. So it's really good for reducing cortisol levels, reducing anxiety, improving memory and concentration. It can decrease alpha and beta. It decreases beta waves, but it increases gamma and delta waves that are sort of the calm waves, helps you to feel relaxed. Thymoleptic means mood elevating. It's a really good herb if you're feeling kind of down in the dumps. Because it's such an amazing memory and concentration herb, when we were studying herbal medicine all those years ago, I used to keep bottles of rosemary oil on my desk. And when I felt kind of bored in a lecture or thought that, my brain was kind of overfull or just sleepy or whatever, I used to inhale the rosemary oil. And this is a fantastic digestive. So it helps you to digest information, but it also helps you to digest food. And it's a great herb for raising the acne, clearing the armor, combating unfriendly microorganisms in the gut. But for our exams, a lot of us made crowns of rosemary to put on our head when we were doing our exams, so that we would remember everything that we needed to for our exams. Neuroprotective is actually hepatoprotective as well. This is an amazing antioxidant herb. And there are all sorts of stories going back hundreds of years about all the tales about how rosemary rejuvenates you and makes you youthful and so on. but it all comes down to the antioxidants. Hepatoprotective, this is also the hangover herb, just so you know. But if you feel like you've got a hangover and you haven't, I mean, not, you know, that you haven't been drinking, but you feel headachy, sluggish, grumpy, out of sorts, this is the remedy. But actually its effect on the liver is amazing, because this ability to protect against free radical damage applies not only to the brain in rosemary, but also the liver. And it helps to protect the liver from damage from toxins, whether that's drugs that you have to be taking, or alcohol, toxins that you might be taking in through the atmosphere, through food and so on. So this is a brilliant herb for brain fog, for lethargy, poor memory and concentration, just feeling exhausted, mentally exhausted, cognitive decline. It's one of the best herbs for headaches and migraines, and for stress-related gut problems, and for irritability. It's probably tridoshic, but it's really good for vata, really good, yeah, really good for pitta, really good for kapha. So roses, you can't talk about herbs for the heart if you don't talk about roses. This is a wonderful Hridaya Rasayana for all three doshas. And actually people think of this as a herb for heartache and grief and matters of the heart, but it's also a really brilliant herb for improving focus, alertness, memory, concentration, mental and emotional fatigue. It's full of antioxidants. It protects against the aging process. It's really good for nervous agitation. It's a Medya and a Hridaya. Thymoleptic means mood elevating. It's really good for low spirits. It's really good for helping you sleep. So who thought that you could actually have a cup of rose tea before going to bed, and it has a GABA-like effect. It's a great anti-inflammatory, cools heat. It's a great anti-pitta herb. This is a herb for helping you to love yourself and to love other people. This is the love herb. The neuroprotective effects are to do with the antioxidants that decrease the signs of aging, promote nerve regeneration, decrease formation of amyloid plaques, and help to prevent cognitive decline and Alzheimer's. The astringent tannins are the things that, you know, people put rose water on their face so that they will tighten their skin and look beautiful. But these astringent toughening up things and tightening things happen in the gut. So this is a really brilliant herb for the gut, for leaky gut syndrome, for aiding digestion, clearing toxins from the gut, helping to reestablish normal gut flora, which is also really important for the mind. It's antimicrobial. It's a great herb for the immune system. So here's the other Brahmi. So they say that the Brahmi leaves look like a cerebellum. And, you know, according to the doctrine of signatures, we should know just by looking at it that this is a great herb for the brain. And this is, again, one of the most famous tonics for the brain, and used to be called a miracle elixir of life, and does all the things that other Medya and Hridaya herbs do. Works on the heart, heartache, feeling grief, bad about yourself, lacking self-esteem, just having emotions, intense emotions, disturb your meditation. But again, really good for cognitive function, memory and focus, and concentration and so on. Really good for boosting cognitive function after a stroke and calming mental turbulence. And like the other Brahmi, it's also been taken for thousands of years to aid meditation, increases GABA, so supports the adrenals. This is, unlike Bacopa, this is a brilliant herb for healing wounds. And this is an incredibly wise herb, because if you have trauma, this is the trauma herb. I mean, it could be emotional and mental trauma, it could be physiological trauma, but wherever you have trauma in the body, physical trauma, what Gotu Kola does is it increases the microcirculation to the area of trauma to bring blood, white blood cells, all sorts of things that are needed to heal the wound. So it speeds healing after trauma. So I've recently broken the bottom of my leg, and I've been rubbing Gotu Kola oil and taking Gotu Kola, and I think I'm doing a good job of healing. But interestingly, in its wisdom, Gotu Kola is also a really brilliant cancer remedy. And what it does is when you get a tumor, the tumor can develop its own blood supply. It's called angiogenesis, and it increases blood flow to the area to enable the tumor to grow more quickly. And Gotu Kola, in its wisdom, reduces or inhibits angiogenesis. So when you've got a wound, it increases blood flow. When you have a tumor, it reduces blood flow. So it's an absolutely brilliant and wise herb. And it's been used for children and babies and old people alike to enhance wisdom. So in terms of the difference between Bacopa and Brahmi, this is an excellent cooling herb for pitta. Bacopa is an excellent, also cooling, but it's kind of sweet and supportive remedy for Vata. They're both tridoshic, so actually you can use them for all three doshas, but Bacopa is Rasayana for Vata, this is Rasayana for Pitta, and it's for all those Sadhaka Pitta, excess Sadhaka Pitta pictures: irritability, frustration, low self-esteem, not suffering fools gladly, driving yourself to a place of burnout and fatigue. But all the other things that Rasayana has, like the poor memory and concentration, mental fatigue, protecting the brain from free radical damage, and so on. It's also a really brilliant herb for the digestion. It's a fantastic herb for the skin, but so is Bacopa. And this is a circulatory remedy. So it calms things like restless legs and so on, and cramps, because it's really good for the circulation.
Annie, sorry to interrupt again.
Yes.
There is a question by Susan. Oops, the chat has disappeared again. Basically, she was told to avoid Siberian ginseng as it would overstimulate adrenal glands and further weaken her in the particular situation. Ashwagandha was suggested instead. And could you please elaborate on the difference when one would choose one versus the other? This was about Siberian ginseng.
Yes, I want my, okay, so just to be completely honest with you, my question that's arising in my mind is, who said that? Because
did you hear that, Susan?
Not Susan, not who said it about Susan, but who said that to Susan, because actually,
you got it.
I have to say I disagree. And Panax ginseng is stimulating. I don't use Panax ginseng, which is Korean ginseng. I think that Panax ginseng is used, Siberian ginseng is from Siberia. It's more of a European remedy. Panax ginseng is from Korea. And that's the thing that's more used probably in Chinese medicine.
Exactly. And Susan was just writing in the chat box, it was a Chinese medicine doctor who made that comment.
Yes. So that's the difference. Panax ginseng is heating and stimulating and yang. Siberian ginseng is cooling, calming, increases resilience to stress, is really good for supporting the adrenals, just like ashwagandha is. But Siberian ginseng is cooling, ashwagandha is warming. But ashwagandha is not yang, it's still an amazing herb for supporting the adrenals. So I've been using Siberian ginseng now for 40 years as a support for the adrenals. I think it's amazing. It's one of my absolute favorite herbs. So I don't like to give, I don't use Siberian Panax ginseng because I don't want to give an adaptogen to somebody and then they're going to tell me they're too stimulated at night and they can't sleep. But Siberian ginseng you can give to people in the evening to help them to sleep. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Annie.
So, and we've only got a couple left. Yes, question about garlic. Did you want me to?
Yep, please go ahead. If you are there already, just take the garlic question.
I can't see it. I can't see any chat. I just saw one come up on the screen.
It is basically why in Vedic culture garlic is not advised as part of a diet.
It's libidinous.
Well, it's yes, go ahead.
Well, in what they say in many traditions is that, you know, it's classified as probably in, you know, as a, what's it called, Vajikarana, you know, like an aphrodisiac. And that an aphrodisiac means it actually nourishes Shukra Dhatu, which is fantastic if you want to get pregnant. It's really good for the sperm and the egg and so on. But actually, if something increases your sexual energy, it could be distracting and it may not be the best thing for a yogi or something. So they say that it's to start with when it's raw and hot, it's rajasic, and then it becomes tamasic.
Yeah.
actually you can feel that when you eat it. You know, it's very energizing to start with when it's hot, and then afterwards it makes you want to go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the reason when I remember my teacher in the ashram, he used to say always, when you take garlic, take the green stem out, remove the green stem in the garlic and put the garlic overnight in yogurt. And that will reduce the rajasic effect of garlic, and it makes it even suitable for Brahmins, or suitable for those who embark on a spiritual journey and spiritual path.
And then it would be really good for the gut flora. So I know we've got just in a few more minutes. Would you like me to cut short or go over?
No, just go ahead.
Okay. We can't not talk about Tulsi. So Tulsi is a wonderful sattvic herb, has an uplifting and strengthening effect. The antioxidants are mainly linoleic and linolenic acid that are really good for protecting the brain, enhancing resilience to stress, and so on. And the essential oils that give it such a wonderful scent are the things that actually are kind of enlivening and are really good for brain fog, helping to clear the mind of excess kapha and also calm the mind from excess vata. So this is a really great herb for vata and for kapha, and for improving focus, concentration, calming the mind, and so on. And as everybody knows, it's found everywhere in India as because of its spiritual qualities, and also because they say it gives off ozone, this unstable form of oxygen that helps to dispel negative energy, but also disease-carrying organisms. It's a great herb for the gut, raises the agni, clears the ama, balances the gut flora. It reduces cortisol, eases tension and anxiety, really good for lifting the spirits. I mean, just to smell it lifts the spirits. It's one of those kind of herbs. Great for the circulation. It oxygenates the brain, and so it makes you feel kind of alive and awake. Really good for any kind of stress-related problem. Cinnamon, surprisingly, is a hridaya. It's great for warming the heart. This is a great anti-kapha and anti-vata remedy. Fantastic herb for enhancing energy and vitality and immunity, increasing resilience to stress. It's a great painkiller. It's a wonderfully sattvic herb. Great antimicrobial for the gut, raises the agni, clears the ama. Full of antioxidants to protect against free radical damage to the nervous system and things that affect cognitive function and Alzheimer's and so on as we get older. Really good for stimulating the circulation if you feel cold in the winter, particularly to sort of muscles, tight, cold muscles. So it's really good for sort of easing tension in muscles all over the body, whether it's in the gut or the shoulders or the neck or whatever, and really good for enhancing blood flow for the joints. So if you're sitting in meditation and your joints hurt, try massaging yourself with some cinnamon oil. It's really rich in magnesium, so that helps the mind as well as the bones, but really good for concentration. And it's a this kind of warming, stimulating, but sort of grounding remedy is really good for sort of feeling motivated. It warms you up, makes you feel less, just less contracted in life, really. Really good for poor memory, concentration. It's a great herb for debility and depletion. And it's a wonderful herb because it's warming. It's great for SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and that kind of winter lethargy, and that kind of lethargy where you kind of feel tense and cold and so on. And because it's such an amazing decongestant and antimicrobial, it's a great herb for gut infections, chest infections, inflammatory problems, and so on. Ashwagandha, can't not talk about ashwagandha. Rasayana for vata, okay, too for kapha, great affinity with Majidhatu. True adaptogen works on the HPA axis, really good for reducing cortisol, improving energy, vitality, immunity, longevity. Joie de vivre, great when you're run down and depleted, or you have a whole range of different neurological problems can be improved with ashwagandha. Great for a nighttime drink. Really good for boosting mental clarity, enhancing memory, protects the brain from deterioration because of all its antioxidant properties, really good for cerebral disorders, benefits the neurotransmitters responsible for processing all sorts of different information. And it's really good for feeling ungrounded, insecure, fearful, anxious, and sort of mental turbulence. I think anybody that's taken it will know that it makes you feel kind of grounded and strong and resilient. And you can really feel that kind of working on the HP axis kind of feeling. And lastly, frankincense. And I just wanted to talk about frankincense, not necessarily because it's used as internally for cognitive function. It's mainly used as an anti-inflammatory. The resin from the bark, it has a sort of white juice that then hardens into a resin. And all over the world, the resin has been burnt, like in churches and so on, because it helps to calm the mind, it sort of enhances your spiritual awareness, let's say. It opens the mind, really good for concentration. You can use the essential oil or use the resin in a sort of set fire to the resin in a kind of burner. And it says that it affects directly the hypothalamus and the pituitary. So it's really good for promoting mental clarity, good for the chest. It deepens the breathing, so it increases the flow of prana through the chest. And so they say it opens the mind and has a meditative effect. Really very useful for pranayama and meditation. When it's taken internally, it's more that it's an anti-inflammatory. It's a blood flow, stimulates the circulation, is really good for stimulating blood flow to the joints, really good for wounds, inflammation, trauma, really good for the immune system. It's a great remedy for autoimmune disease. But the reason that I put it here is really to be used. You can see the resin there and the oil, just to put in burners and so on, to deepen the breathing. And as you deepen the breathing, that also helps to relax you and ground you and calm you and help you to focus. So herbs, flowers, their beauty, their scent, as well as mankind who gaze on them in wonder, are all parts of one stupendous whole whose body nature is, and God the soul. Look around our world, behold the chain of love combining all below and all above.
Thank you so much, Annie. We are really, you've done extremely well, just 3 minutes over.
Not bad.
No, really done well. It's been amazing. Personally, I've got so many questions and I wanted to chat with you about some experiences, but there's no time. And we are aware, for those who have asked very generic questions about how to take herbs and in which form and all of that, Annie has indirectly and directly, I think, answered that question. It very much depends on the person who once prescribes the herbs to. So we can't really give any specific advice for any person, because it actually really depends from case to case. So in this context, I just wanted to acknowledge those who have put the questions in the chat box. We have run out of time, and Annie has got lots of information out there on how to take the herbs, which form to take them. We know that Annie is very strong on tinctures and so on. So I'm sure this wasn't the last time that we have had the chance to have Annie as a guest. So I would like to thank you again on behalf of the APA, really, that you took the time, and we know that you have had a few health challenges and that you really came and spoke to us tonight. We really appreciate it. And I guess every single person here has got so much information to take back home and to revise. So Annie, thank you very much again. And
my pleasure. And I'm so sorry for going so close to the wire that I didn't, if I haven't had a chance to answer questions that are in the chat, which I haven't seen actually, but if I haven't answered your questions, then I'm sorry. Next time.
No problems.
Most of them have been done as we've gone along.
Okay.
And now we're just getting, thank you, Annie, brilliant. I've ordered your book. I'm always inspired by talks. Thank you very much. And, you know, it's just like thanks, and more thanks, really. I think there's one a lady has put in twice. which I'm just going to go back to, even though I said let's not go over. What about Thymus vulgaris? Is it useful to improve memory? And that I've seen that come up 3 times now.
Oh, well, yes, time is an amazing, because I could have waxed lyrical for a whole day basically on this subject because there are so many amazing media herbs. And actually thyme is another of those herbs that could be a cordial as well, you know, calms the mind and lifts the spirits. It's a wonderful herb for the mind. It's fantastic for the gut, raises the agni, clears the armor, combats unfriendly bacteria. It's a great anti-vata remedy because it's the shyness, you know, it's for being kind of nervy or actually quite, it's warming. So people that sort of feel weak or shy or don't want to raise the challenge and don't want to speak out and so on, it's a herb for bravery. So for nervousness and bravery and so on, and it's great for mental agitation and kind of being vatary all over the place, and great for kapha because it clears congestion. Bit warming for pitta.
Okay, well, I saw that one come up again, so I thought I'd ask you. Thank you very much for coming back. I hope you'll come back again, and you know we can go for another subject because you know we all love you. And
thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and so lovely that you all came. And that we're all here, and hope to see you in person maybe next year for some APA event.
Everyone in person, and then we can all get together and go for longer. So get well soon, please, from all of us.
Thank you.
You need to get your dancing shoes back on again. So
yes, well, sometimes you wonder. But yeah, I'm taking loads of Siberian ginseng, loads of Gotu Kola, and boswellia, frankincense. So I'm getting there.
Just before we all go, a reminder, there's one more seminar that we have in December. I believe it's the 11th of December. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's on here. It's on the chat.
Yeah, just to mention it again for those who don't read the chat. So we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time. And again, Annie, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Lovely to see you. Bye.
Thank you, Annie. Bye-bye.
Bye.